Hello, hello, my loves. Coming to you live today from my bed, literally. I'm rocking the messy bun, and in this light here in my bedroom, you can really see this delightful silver hair that is taking over my head. I have not washed my hair yet today, and I'm pretty cool with that. I will. I'll wash it later on in a little while. So let's talk about self love, right? So here's me on a work day on Fridays, sitting in my bed talking to you because this is really what I feel called to do. Like, I wasn't, honest to God, I wasn't feeling super excited about going live a little while ago. And then, um, for a second, I started thinking, like, those sort of shameful thoughts, like, shame on you for not wanting to go live, like, you said you would do this and you need to do this. And I started getting into that mindset, and that's just so not helpful, right? So i I went gentle with myself, which is what I always tell my clients to do, and even my kids and my friends when they listen to me. But I went gentle with myself, and when I got gentle and when I decided that I wasn't going to beat myself up over it, and that everything was, everything gets to be okay. Everything gets to be okay. And this has been a really hard lesson for me to learn. But when I kind of dropped into that idea that everything gets to be okay, I was like, well, duh, technology, you don't have to even get out of bed to do the live stream. And that made me so happy. And now I'm so excited to be here with you talking about self love. So, how about that shifted energy? Um, so I think, I don't want to speak for everybody, but at least from my perspective, I think self love, loving myself, just like unapologetically, has been really hard for me. I was this kid that was, I always felt awkward. And I think I have some like ridiculously amazing friends that have known me since I was a little kid, like kindergarten, elementary school. And I don't know if they would agree that I was awkward when I was a kid, but I always felt awkward. So it really doesn't matter so much what other people think of you, right? It really matters what you think of yourself. And I always felt so awkward, and I always wanted to be different. And I was always looking for those ways to change myself and be more like the other people, because I just didn't think that who I was good enough. And that's a sort of, excuse me, my eye was itchy. That was sort of a theme that kind of I carried into my life. And it's only been maybe the last 5 years or so, when on my spiritual journey kind of started, that I was really able to start questioning, am I good enough? Why am I not good enough? Like, what makes me not good enough? And why don't I get to be good enough? And I am good enough. And when I really started taking the time to get to know myself, to know what I liked, I stopped trying to check all the boxes that everybody else told me I needed to check. And I started to really get to know myself and really understand what what do I like? Who am I? Who am I? When I stop checking boxes, when I stop trying to meet the expectations of other people about who I should be, who am I? And what kind of person am I? And do I like that person? And turns out, not surprisingly to me now, turns out I actually like myself. I'm a pretty good person. I'm interesting. I think differently than most of the people that I grew up with, especially my family. I'm definitely the black sheep of the family. When I was in the fourth grade, Princess Diana was, there was this like pattern that came out, and it was and I had a shirt that had this design on it. It was a purple shirt, which is my favorite color and still is, and it had all these white sheep on the shirt, all over the front of the shirt, and then this one black sheep. And everyone called it the Princess Diana pattern. And because apparently Princess Diana was the black sheep of the royal family. And I resonated so much with that shirt. I loved it. I wore it all the time. And now looking back, I think it's so funny that that was my favorite shirt, and I totally loved it, and I completely resonated with it back then, because I just didn't fit in. And now I know, as the saying goes, you've probably heard this before, why fit in when you were born to stand out, right? So here I am talking about things that people don't understand, talking about, you know, talking about energy, and talking about law of attraction, and talking about conscious parenting, and talking about self-love and putting yourself first, and selfishness. And I think more and more, especially as my community grows, that's not such a an outrageous concept, but certainly for the community from which I came, that is a crazy concept, because I was taught to always sacrifice, and that nothing worth having is is easy. Nothing worth having comes easily. You have to sacrifice, and you have to struggle, and you have to put yourself last, and you have to put other people first, and always take other people's feelings into consideration first, and always put your children first. And that mentality got me to kind of like almost to the point of being a blithering idiot. I was exhausted. I was burnt out. I had nothing to show for myself. I had no money. I had no solid relationships. I had miserable children. I was miserable. It just there nothing was solid. My foundation was like built of matchsticks that were on fire. Like there was nothing solid about the life that I created, by working so hard to check all the boxes and achieve all the things that I was supposed to do. Um, so that said, when I realized that I got to actually take time to get to know myself and like myself, and be okay with who I am, and make the choices that felt good to me, and make choices that come from my soul, and that come from my desires, and that have nothing to do with what other people want and expect from me, everything started shifting, right? And now here I am 5 years later, and honestly, my spiritual journey has been a completely lifelong, like totally lifelong, and it will continue for the rest of my life. But 5 years ago was a marked sort of pivoting point where things started to become radically different for me, and I really started to see the world differently and understand things differently. I'll keep going back to that 5 year mark, but yes, it's a lifelong journey. But it was that pivotal point 5 years ago when I really was like, fuck this. I can't live like this anymore. I was in complete survival mode. I had no solid foundation. I had no self-love. And as I shifted and started knowing myself and allowing myself to be who I am, and realizing that I really like myself. I really like my black sheepness. I really like my woo-woo energy, quantum physics mind. Like, I actually study quantum physics for fun, and my family thinks that's insane. Um, but that's okay, because I like it, and it helps me understand the woo-woo side of the spirituality, that I truly believe in. So I really believe this, and I hope that if you don't agree with me about this, you'll at least consider what I'm going to say. And it's this, right? I believe in a higher power. I often call it source energy. I sometimes call it God. I'm still working that out with myself, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. But I believe in source. I believe in this higher power. I believe in, this higher energy that is guiding us and flowing to us. And I believe in my soul, and I believe that my soul is constantly giving me guidance about, what my path of least resistance is, and how I can get to what I want. And I think that's really important. So I really believe this, and I don't think that source makes mistakes. And I don't think, or God, right? I don't think that God makes mistakes, and I don't think that we have our personalities, and I'm not talking about the personalities that we've created by trying to be who people think we're supposed to be or tell us we're supposed to be. I'm talking about the personalities that we are deep down inside on a soul level, right? So who are you deep down inside when all the veils are pulled back, when all the masks are taken off, when you're alone with yourself in the dark, who are you? And I don't think that that person, whoever that is wrong. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think, in fact, the complete opposite is that that person is a million bajillion% correct. And the more we can allow ourselves to embrace that person, the more we can show up in authentic alignment with that person, the more the more we have to give to everybody else, right? I don't think God makes mistakes. I don't think we were made the way that we were made by accident. And I don't think that our desires are by accident either. I think that the desires we have, whatever they are, and I mean all the desire to have a career that we love, the desire to have children and love our children, the desire to not have children, the desire to travel, the desire to be rich, the desire to be humble, like whatever your desire is, the desire to have a beautiful relationship, the desire to travel the world and be a teacher of trapeze arts, like whatever it is, our sexual desires, I don't think any of that's wrong. And I think it's when we try to deny that, um, that we get crossways of ourselves. You know, I think our souls and our desires, it's all one and the same, and it's all divine, and it all comes from that bigger energy, that bigger benevolent, all loving, all knowing, pure positive energy. And it's beautiful. And the more that we can allow ourselves to step into that, the happier we feel, the better we feel, because the more in alignment we are with that inner truth, the better we feel, and the better we feel, the better our circumstances are, right? Our circumstances very slowly at first will start to shift and will start to change, little by little, in accordance with our alignment with our inner truth. And this is huge. And we are taught to see it before we believe it. And it really needs to be the other way around. We really need to believe that all things are possible for us before we can allow all things to come to us. And I think that being able to believe that all things are possible really starts with loving yourself and getting to know yourself. And in order to love yourself and get to know yourself, you have to allow you have to allow yourself to be who you are. You have to allow yourself to just be the way that you are, in all your perfect divine glory. Exactly the way God created you is exactly perfect, and exactly who you need to be. And I think that, in my post in the group, I talk about, like, what did you do to show yourself self-love today? And last week I talked about getting a manicure and a pedicure, which definitely, like, some would call it self-care. I was loving on myself. I spontaneously decided to get a pedicure and then a manicure and blah blah blah. Today I was taking a nap, and a lot of that falls under the self-care umbrella, and okay, and that is part of self-love, right? Because at some point you have to decide you're worth and worthy of the pedicure or the nap. And but self-love is way deeper than that. It's way deeper than that. It's really about just owning who you are deep down and giving yourself permission to get to know that person. And hopefully, this is my hope for myself, um hopefully the getting to know who I am part never ends. Of course it's never going to end. So I'm really, I just lost my train of thought for a second. I'm sorry, but we need to give ourselves permission to start to get to know who we really are deep down inside, who we really are at our soul level. And I know that for such a long time that was so hard for me, because shame, right? I was so ashamed for so long that I wasn't the person I thought I was supposed to be. I was supposed to be, uh, I was supposed to go to college, and I was supposed to graduate, and I was supposed to, these are actual things that people in my family have said to me about their expectations for me. I was supposed to marry the big man on campus. That's a direct quote. I always thought you would marry the big man on campus. Really? What does that even mean, right? It felt icky when I heard it said. It feels icky to say it now. Um, I was supposed to get a degree. I was supposed to get an advanced degree. I was supposed to have a career in some sort of international relations because I speak Spanish really, really well. And that's, that's what our kind of people do. And I was supposed to be wealthy, and I was supposed to be, you know, the PTO mom, and I was supposed to be the classroom mom, and I was supposed to do all the play dates with my kids, and I was supposed to, cook dinner at night, like all of these things, and so much of it just didn't feel right. I'm a mom. I swear at my kids, like I'm that mom. I'm not the one who's running the PTO meeting. I don't even bring real baked goods to the bake sale at the school, and that's okay, right? Like that's okay. I bake. I just don't bring what I bake to school because no, you get store-bought shit. The stuff I bake is for my family because that's the way I like it. And I get to do that, and I get to do it without shame. And I don't have to be ashamed of who I married, and I don't have to be ashamed of the fact that I got divorced, and I don't have to be ashamed of the fact that I had another relationship and another kid after my marriage ended and never got married. And like, I don't have to be ashamed of any of this. I don't have to be ashamed that I never finished college. I don't have to be ashamed that I didn't want a career in international relations just because I speak Spanish. Like, I don't have to be ashamed. I don't have to be ashamed of my sexuality for the longest time. And this is like, I don't think I've actually ever shared this before, but I'm sharing it here now because I love myself and I want you guys to um, see me loving myself. But I thought for the longest time that if I owned my sexuality and the fact that I love to have sex and I'm a very highly sexual person, I thought that that meant I wasn't a good girl. I didn't think good girls could be sexual. And I didn't think that good boys liked girls who were sexual, right? And there was this strange dichotomy that was going, like this strange duality that was living in my head. Like, you want to marry the good guy, but you can't own the sexual part of yourself if you're going to do that. So, how do you reconcile that, right? And so, for the longest time, and I really only had two significant long term relationships in my adult life. And the first one was with a wonderful person who is one of my close friends now. We were married for a long time. We had no sexual chemistry whatsoever, but we were great friends. And then my next relationship had this great, intense sexual chemistry, and we connected on zero intellectual levels, zero like mind belief levels. Like, we connected in no other way except in the bedroom. So even after that relationship ended, I still didn't think that it was possible to find both pieces in one until a few years ago I met someone, and by all accounts he seemed to appreciate my mind, my soul, my beliefs, my sense of humor, and my body, all the things about me. And it took me a good 2 years into this three plus years and counting situation before I actually started to understand that it could be both, right? And that was a matter of not being willing to love that part of myself and not being willing to love that sexual part of myself. Like, there was something dirty and wrong about that. And I wasn't raised in a super strict environment like that. It wasn't like that. It was just somewhere this belief came in, and I carried it with me, and I refused to look at that part of myself, and I refused to get to know that part of myself, and I refused to acknowledge that it even existed because I just didn't want to be the bad girl. Like, I didn't want to be unlovable. I wanted to be good. So when I was finally able to own that part of myself and say, like, yeah, I can totally be both, right? I can totally be all the things. There's no limits. There's no rule about how it has to be. I get to make the rules. I get to decide what's true for me. And I get to, without shame and without apology and without guilt, get to know myself and believe that all the parts of me are perfect just as they are. And I hope that you will do the same. Allow yourself to go there. Allow yourself to love all of the parts of you and allow them to come to the surface so that you can, you know, really spend time with them and really get to know who you are in that deep soul level truth place. Like, who are you? And when you realize, when you start doing that, when you start allowing yourself to get to know who you are deep down, there's no doubt in my mind that you will fall in love with yourself, because there's there's just no other way, because there were no mistakes made. The mistakes that are happening are when we're trying to deny those parts of ourselves that we think are not good enough. Um, and here's what happens when you get, people will call you selfish for paying so much attention to yourself. Eh, People will call you selfish. People will say all kinds of things. That's their story. Their story doesn't have to be your story. Their story doesn't have to be my story. I get to make my own story, right? And so, when people call me selfish, I'm totally okay with that, because I know that when I love myself from the inside out, when I love every part of myself that I've gotten to know so far, and when I know with a million percent certainty that every new part I get to know moving forward, I will also love so unapologetically and so unconditionally. When you love yourself that much, you can't help but love other people. You can't help it. It's not a choice. At that point, when you walk around on a mostly regular basis, and I say that because none of us are ever 100% consistent all the time, but when you walk around 90%, 95% of the time, and you're deeply in love with who you are, and you have no apologies about it and no conditions on it and no guilt about it, when you walk around in your day to day life like that, you can't help but love other people. And you can't help but see the good in other people. And you can't help but uplift other people. You just can't help it. It's not a choice. It's not a choose to be kind. This drives me nuts. And I'm not dissing kindness. Like, I'm not saying don't be kind. I'm not saying be an asshole, right? What I'm saying is, when I see posts about choose kindness and just be kind, and you don't know what people are going through, so just be kind, like kindness is a choice. Well, if you're having to make a conscious choice to be kind, you are not coming from a place of alignment, because when you are in alignment with your soul, with your truth, with who you really are, when you have loved up yourself so much, kindness is no longer a choice, it's a default. It's the status quo. It's your baseline when you're in that level of alignment. Kindness is your baseline. Love is your baseline. There's no choosing kindness. There's no choosing love. It's automatic. It's automatic. And how do you show up in your life when love and kindness is your fucking default? Like, how would your life be different right now if you could show up even 80% of the time with love and kindness as your default method? What would that be like in your relationships with your children, if you have children? What would that be like in your relationships with your spouse or your lover or your parents or your siblings or your boss or coworkers or even the lady at the registry of motor vehicles? Like, what would it be like if your default, if your baseline was just love and kindness and it wasn't a choice anymore? Seriously, like, It has made such a huge difference for me. I'm a different mom. I parent my kids so differently. And now I'm like trying to unteach them all of the bullshit conditioning that I taught them the first, 15 years of their lives, but that's a whole different live stream. Um, I'm just saying when you give yourself permission to get to know yourself deep down in your soul, the way God made you perfectly, without the shoulds and without the conditions and without the expectations and without having to check all the boxes that everyone else told you that you needed to check. When you love yourself from that place and you do it unapologetically and without shame, love and kindness become your default. They become your baseline, and you don't walk around consciously choosing to be kind to people because it's your default, it's your baseline. And that makes all the difference in the world in how you show up in every aspect of your life. It just, it feels so good. And so I invite you at this point, as I'm wrapping up talking about self-love, I invite you to get to know yourself. And I guarantee you 100% when you get to know who you are and you give yourself permission to get to know your soul and your deepest truths, and you will absolutely fall in love with yourself. You will fall in love with yourself because you're perfect, because God made you that way on purpose. God doesn't make mistakes. Like, God does not make mistakes. And if your truth, whatever it is, if you allow yourself to discover it, you have no choice but to fall in love with yourself because you're perfect, because you're beautiful, because you're amazing. And there's no other option. There really isn't. There's just no other option. Deep down, that's who we are. So I invite you at this point, when you're ready, if you're ready, I invite you to get to know yourself, because I promise you, you will fall in love with yourself. And when you do, when you fall in love with yourself and you approach your life from that place of unapologetic self love, you can't help but spill that shit all over the place onto everybody you know.